What happens when a royal guest thinks she can waltz onto a live television show and demand special treatment from seasoned presenters who have been doing this job for decades? In just 38 seconds, one shocking comment would turn a routine daytime chat show into television chaos that nobody saw coming. The Loose Women studio buzzed with its usual energy that Tuesday afternoon. Ruth Langsford sat confidently at the panel desk, her warm smile ready to welcome viewers back from the commercial break. Beside her, Colleen Nolan shuffled through her notes, while Janet Street Porter adjusted her signature glasses. The fourth chair belonged to Denise Welch, who was checking her phone one last time before cameras rolled. "We're back in 5, 4, 3, the floor manager called out, his hand counting down the final seconds. Ruth straightened in her chair and looked directly into the camera with practiced ease. "Welcome back to Loose Women. Now, joining us today is someone who needs no introduction. She's made headlines around the world and continues to be one of the most talked about figures in modern celebrity culture. Please welcome our very special guest." The studio audience erupted into polite applause as Meghan walked onto the set. She wore an expensive-looking cream-colored blazer and moved with the kind of confidence that comes from years in the spotlight. But there was something different about her demeanor today, something that made Ruth's experienced presenter instincts prick up with concern. "Thank you so much for having me," Meghan said as she settled into the guest chair. Her smile seemed forced, almost brittle around the edges. "We're absolutely delighted to have you here," Ruth replied warmly. "Now, I have to ask, how are you finding life in the public eye? It must be quite overwhelming at times." Meghan's expression shifted slightly. "Well, Ruth, I think that's a rather simplistic way to look at it. The public eye, as you call it, is something I've navigated with grace and dignity despite facing challenges that, frankly, most people in this industry wouldn't understand." Colleen leaned forward, sensing the slight tension in Meghan's response. "Of course, and we all admire how you've handled the pressure, but surely there must be moments when you just want to be normal, away from all the attention?" "Normal?" Meghan's laugh had a sharp edge to it. "I'm not sure any of you really understand what normal means for someone in my position. The level of scrutiny, the constant judgment, the way every single thing I do gets twisted by the media. It's not something that people who host daytime television shows could possibly comprehend." Ruth felt her professional smile falter for just a moment. In 25 years of television presenting, she had learned to read guests like books. This wasn't nervousness or interview jitters. This was something else entirely. "I think we all understand pressure here," Janet interjected, her voice carrying its usual no-nonsense tone. "We've all been in this business for quite some time, and we've all faced our share of media attention and criticism." Meghan turned to look at Janet with barely concealed disdain. "Have you, though? Have you really? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've had quite comfortable careers without facing the kind of systematic targeting that I've endured." The studio fell unnaturally quiet. Even the audience seemed to sense that something was shifting in the atmosphere. Ruth could feel the familiar weight of responsibility that came with live television, the knowledge that whatever happened next would be broadcast to hundreds of thousands of viewers. "I think what we're trying to say," Denise said carefully, "is that we're all here to support each other. This industry can be tough on everyone, regardless of their background or circumstances. Support each other?" Meghan's voice rose slightly. "That's rich coming from a panel of women who have spent years commenting on my life, my choices, my family, without ever once considering the human cost of your words." Ruth felt her heart rate increase. This was dangerous territory for live television. She needed to steer the conversation back to safer ground. But Meghan seemed determined to push forward into conflict. "We've always tried to be fair in our discussions," Ruth said diplomatically. "When we talk about public figures, we try to present different perspectives and encourage debate. That's what our show is about. Fair?" Meghan stood up abruptly, causing her chair to scrape loudly against the studio floor. "You call it fair when you dissect every outfit I wear, every speech I give, every charity I support? When you question my motives and my authenticity on national television?" The cameras continued rolling, capturing every moment of the escalating confrontation. Ruth could see the floor manager frantically gesturing from the side of the set, clearly unsure whether to cut to commercial or let the drama play out. "We discuss all public figures," Colleen said firmly. "That's the nature of what we do here. It's not personal. It's part of the job of being in the public eye." "Not personal?" Meghan's composure was completely gone now. "Everything you say about me is personal. Every judgment, every criticism, every snide comment affects real people, real relationships, real lives." Ruth stood up as well, her instincts as a host kicking in. She needed to regain control of her show, to protect her panel and her audience from what was clearly becoming an uncomfortable situation. "I think perhaps we should take a breath here," Ruth said calmly but firmly. "We're all passionate about what we believe in, but let's remember that we're here to have a civilized conversation." "You want civilized?" Meghan spat, her voice cutting through the studio like a blade. "There's nothing civilized about sitting here pretending that what you do is journalism when it's really just gossip dressed up as discussion. You're nothing more than middle-aged women with nothing better to do than tear down people who are actually making a difference in the world." The collective gasp from the studio audience was audible. Ruth felt every muscle in her body tense. In all her years of hosting, no guest had ever spoken to her panel with such venom, such calculated cruelty. "Excuse me?" Janet's voice was dangerously quiet. "Did you just call us middle-aged women like it's some kind of insult?" "If the shoe fits," Meghan shot back, her arms crossed defensively. "Look at yourselves. Look at what you've accomplished. You sit here day after day, picking apart the lives of people who are actually out there changing the world, making real impacts, while you contribute nothing but negativity and judgment." Denise stood up slowly, her face flushed with anger. "How dare you come onto our show, into our workplace, and insult us like that? We've all had successful careers long before you were even a household name." "Successful?" Meghan laughed bitterly. "Is that what you call this? Sitting around a table gossiping about other people's lives? Where I come from, we call that being petty and irrelevant." Ruth could feel the situation spiraling completely out of control. Her professional instincts screamed at her to cut to commercial, to end this disaster before it got any worse. But something deeper, something more personal, made her stand her ground. "I think you need to stop right there," Ruth said, her voice carrying an authority that filled the studio. "You've been incredibly rude and disrespectful since the moment you sat down. We invited you here as a guest, and this is how you repay our hospitality?" "Hospitality?" Meghan's eyes were blazing now. "You call ambushing me with loaded questions and judgment hospitality? You call creating a hostile environment where I'm expected to defend every choice I've ever made hospitality?" Colleen shook her head in disbelief. "Nobody ambushed you. We asked you normal questions that any guest would expect. You're the one who turned this into an attack." "Normal questions?" Meghan turned on Colleen with fury. "There's nothing normal about the way you people operate. You pretend to be supportive while secretly hoping for drama. For moments like this that you can replay and dissect for weeks." "That's completely untrue," Ruth said firmly. "We've always conducted ourselves professionally, and we've never set out to embarrass or attack any guest." "Professional?" Meghan scoffed. "You want to talk about professional? Let me tell you what's professional. Professional is using your platform to uplift people, to discuss real issues that matter. Not to spend your time analyzing what someone wore to an event or whether their smile looked genuine enough." Janet had heard enough. "You know what? You're absolutely right. We should be discussing real issues. So let's discuss the real issue of how someone can come onto a television show and behave so appallingly toward the people who invited them." "Appalling?" Meghan's voice reached a new level of indignation. "What's appalling is the way you've made careers out of other people's pain. What's appalling is that you think you have the right to judge and criticize people you don't even know." The studio audience was completely silent now, watching this train wreck unfold in real time. Ruth could see the shock on their faces, the uncomfortable shifting in their seats as they witnessed something that clearly wasn't supposed to be happening. "We have every right to discuss public figures," Ruth said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "That's what we do here, and we do it fairly and with respect. Something you clearly know nothing about." "Respect?" Meghan practically shrieked. "You want to lecture me about respect? You who have spent years making money off the backs of people's personal struggles? You who turn tragedy into entertainment and call it television?" Denise stepped forward, her face red with anger. "That's enough. You've crossed every line imaginable. You've insulted us, our show, our audience, and our careers. I've never seen such disgraceful behavior from a guest in my entire life." "Disgraceful?" Meghan whirled around to face Denise. "What's disgraceful is that people like you are given platforms to spread your poison, while people who are actually trying to make positive change in the world get torn down by your constant negativity." "People like me?" Denise's voice was shaking with rage. "What exactly do you mean by that?" "I mean people who have nothing constructive to offer. People who build their careers on drama and conflict instead of substance and meaning." The insult hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Ruth could see her colleagues struggling to maintain their composure in the face of such unprecedented rudeness. "I think it's time for you to leave," Ruth said quietly, but with unmistakable finality. "Leave?" Meghan laughed harshly. "Oh, you'd love that, wouldn't you? You'd love to paint me as the villain who stormed off your precious little show. Well, I'm not going anywhere until I've said what needs to be said." Ruth felt something snap inside her. 25 years of professional broadcasting, of treating every guest with courtesy and respect, of maintaining dignity even in the most challenging situations. And this was what she got in return. She looked directly at Meghan with steel in her eyes. "Actually, you are going to leave," Ruth said, her voice cutting through the studio with absolute authority. "This is my show, this is my set, and I will not tolerate another second of your appalling behavior." "Your show?" Meghan's laugh was bitter and mocking. "This isn't a show, Ruth. This is a circus, and you're the ringmaster of mediocrity. You think because you've been doing this tired format for decades that somehow makes you important?" The audience gasped again, but Ruth didn't flinch. She'd found her strength now, the core of steel that had carried her through decades of live television. "What makes me important," Ruth replied calmly, "is that I treat people with respect. I don't come into other people's workplaces and insult them. I don't bite the hand that feeds me, and I certainly don't mistake rudeness for strength." "Respect?" Meghan's voice was reaching hysterical levels now. "You wouldn't know respect if it hit you in the face. You sit here day after day, judging people you don't understand, discussing lives you could never live, pretending your opinions matter to anyone." Janet stood up, her patience finally exhausted completely. "Right, that's it. Security needs to escort this woman off the premises immediately. I've never witnessed such disgraceful, entitled behavior in my entire career." "Entitled?" Meghan spun around to face Janet, her composure completely shattered. "You're calling me entitled? Look around you, Janet. Look at this pathetic setup, this bargain basement talk show that thinks it's relevant. You're all just jealous because I've achieved things you could never dream of." "Achieved things?" Colleen's voice was incredulous. "You mean like coming onto our show and proving to the entire country what kind of person you really are? Because if that was your goal, then congratulations. You've succeeded brilliantly." "What kind of person I really am?" Meghan was practically screaming now. "I'm the kind of person who tells the truth, who doesn't pretend that what you do here has any value whatsoever. I'm the kind of person who won't sit quietly while small-minded people try to tear me down." Denise shook her head in disgust. "The only person tearing you down is yourself. Every word out of your mouth is proving exactly why people have concerns about your character." "My character?" Meghan's face was flushed red with rage. "Don't you dare question my character when you've built your entire careers on gossip and backstabbing. At least I'm honest about who I am." Ruth stepped forward, her voice calm but absolutely final. "Security is on their way. You have 30 seconds to leave this studio voluntarily, or you will be removed." "You can't do this to me," Meghan said, but for the first time there was uncertainty in her voice. "Do you have any idea who I am? Do you understand the consequences of treating me this way?" "I know exactly who you are," Ruth replied with devastating quietness. "You're someone who thought they could come onto my show and bully my colleagues. You're someone who mistakes arrogance for confidence and cruelty for honesty. And you're someone who is no longer welcome here." The studio doors opened, and 2 security guards entered. The sight of them seemed to finally penetrate Meghan's rage-induced haze. She looked around the studio, at the shocked faces of the panel, at the stunned audience, at the cameras that had captured every moment of her meltdown. "This isn't over," she said, her voice shaking with fury and something that might have been the first hint of realization about what she had done. "You'll regret this. All of you will regret treating me this way. The only person who will regret anything," Ruth said with quiet dignity, "is you, when you see how this looks played back. When you realize how you threw away any sympathy or support people might have had for you." "I don't need sympathy from people like you," Meghan spat, but she was already backing toward the studio exit. "I don't need support from has-beens and never-wears who think daytime television makes them important." The security guards flanked her now, not touching her, but making it clear that her time was up. Meghan looked around one more time, her face a mask of fury and defiance. "You're all pathetic," she said as her final parting shot. "Absolutely pathetic." And then she was gone, escorted out of the studio and out of the building, leaving behind a shocked silence that seemed to echo in the empty space where she had been standing. Ruth looked at her colleagues, then at the audience, then directly into the camera. Her professional composure was intact, but everyone could see the emotional toll of what had just happened. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said quietly. "I apologize that you had to witness that. In 25 years of broadcasting, I have never experienced anything like what just happened here today." The audience erupted into spontaneous applause, not the polite applause of a television show, but genuine, heartfelt support for Ruth and the panel, who had maintained their dignity in the face of such an unprecedented attack. "We'll be right back after this break," Ruth continued, her voice steady despite everything. "And when we return, we'll continue with our planned discussion about kindness and respect in public discourse, because clearly, that's a conversation we all need to have."